Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes Movies and Superhero Movies. Sorry we've been away for a while. Life kind of sometimes gets in the way. Today we're going to talk about The Amazing Spider-Man, directed by Mark Webb, starring Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Rhys Ifans, Dennis Leary, Martin Sheen, and Sally Field, and written by James Vanderbilt, Alvin Sargent, and Steve Kloves from a story by James Vanderbilt. Before we get into the movie, though, I would like to say thank you to a person who gave us a 5-star review on iTunes. His name is Cop60, and he said, "I really enjoy all the different views on all the comic movies out there, and it is great to hear a fan's perspective. P.S. Can you guys do a podcast on the DC shows Arrow and Smallville?" First of all, thank you, Cop60, for your 5-star review. Really appreciate that. I watched all of Smallville, and it's possible we could maybe do like an episode talking about the whole series or a series as a whole. But Arrow, I'm actually not caught up on Arrow. I've only seen half of the first season, so I'd have to catch up, I think, and then maybe after that we could. You know, there's going to be a few other comic book TV shows coming out. The Flash, and NBC has Constantine coming out, and Gotham, yep, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and there's going to be an Agent Carter show now. So, and then not to mention Netflix coming, next year, 2015. They're going to have Daredevil and Iron Fist and 2 other shows. Is it Luke Cage? I think Luke Cage is one of them, and Jessica Jones, is that her name? Is that the 4th one?
I don't know.
Well, there's 4 new Marvel shows.
I didn't know about Iron Fist or Luke Cage.
You just thought it was just Daredevil?
And is that Netflix doing that one?
It is. They're going to be Netflix shows.
Okay, yeah.
Which is actually pretty cool.
That is cool. I like Netflix doing television shows.
So, we started this podcast primarily as a movie podcast, but we love all things superheroes, so maybe once we get caught up on certain shows or once Gotham starts or something, maybe we can kind of do episode recap episodes or something. But the other problem is we started this podcast kind of doing it as a bi-weekly podcast, and so the TV shows are usually weekly, and so it's something we'd have to try to figure out if we could pull off. But thank you again, and we've gotten some other folks have given us 5-star reviews. There's a couple of 4-star reviews, and there's actually somebody, or a couple of somebodies perhaps, have given us a 1-star review, which is fine, but unfortunately they didn't write a review, so I don't know why they don't like us, unfortunately. I don't know.
Please tell us why you don't like us.
Maybe there's something we could change. We're a new podcast. We're trying to still kind of figure it out, so feel free to give us any star review on iTunes, but also write us a review and let us know what you like, what you don't like, what we can change, what we can fix. If you have any constructive criticism, we can take it. On to the movie?
Yeah, let's go on to the movie.
All right. So this was released in July of 2012, and I saw it in the theater, and I remember I was initially kind of a little let down by it. I think the Sam Raimi films were just too fresh in my mind, perhaps, or something. And there were things I liked about it, which we'll get into. But I think overall I was just kind of disappointed. What did you think when you saw it?
Yeah, I was the same way. I had the Sam Raimi movies. I tried to watch it without thinking about the Sam Raimi movies, and that was near impossible for me.
Right.
I loved the Spider-Man movies so much, and I could, just every moment I feel like I was just judging it.
Yeah.
And not to mention there was a kid talking throughout the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Which was really terrible because there was no one in the theater really but us and them.
Right.
So it was awkward, and I take that back. There was another couple in there, and the lady got really ticked off and went and told on him. Probably about halfway through the movie. And
that's frustrating. That can ruin a movie.
It did, and even when they left, I was lost already, and
couldn't focus.
I was still kind of fuming about the experience. So I didn't remember a lot of the movie. This was the second time I watched it, and so I've got a lot to bring to the table. What did you think? What did you think about the movie?
Overall, I thought it was okay. I just didn't think it lived up to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and especially Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, obviously.
Yeah, I agree with
Better
that.
than Spider-Man 3, though. But I just, I liked... I mean, we can go right into the cast. Let's talk about the cast. I really liked Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I thought physically he kind of looks more like Spider-Man than Tobey Maguire does, perhaps. Tobey Maguire was not by any means a bad-looking Spider-Man, but Andrew Garfield, who plays Peter Parker in Spider-Man in this, is skinnier, And Spider-Man, I feel like in the comics, has always kind of been portrayed as a skinny person or a skinny kid.
Yeah.
And so physically, I thought he was really good. And then as Peter Parker, I thought he was excellent. He can sometimes go over the top a little bit with some of his mannerisms, but I can kind of see past that. That's nitpicking. And I think
I didn't have too big of a problem. You'd mentioned that to me before, and rewatching it, it didn't take away from the movie for me.
That's good.
One of the things that bugged me about Andrew Garfield in the theater when I saw it was, the common thing that's brought up is that he's not really geeky enough or whatever. But I was thinking about it this time, and in today's age, geeks are not really looked upon the way that they were back when Spider-Man was written.
Right.
They're kind of cool. They're techs.
Yeah.
They can do stuff with phones and everything. That they're kind of the go-to people now.
Right. Absolutely, and it's not. I think back then, perhaps it was kind of a more Revenge of the Nerds type nerd that maybe he was kind of supposed to be. Like he had the dark glasses or something in the pocket protectors, and the whole idea of a nerd has kind of changed over the years. It's actually kind of cool to be a nerd now, And
now, of course, you had Flash, which he kind of doesn't. He kind of takes that away still. You've got the bullies picking on the nerds still.
Right. Which I'm sure obviously still exists. But
yes.
And that's one of my problems with the movie. Flash seems like he's such a bully for just the sake of the fact that they need a bully in the movie. The first time you see Flash, he's holding a kid upside down, and he's telling Peter Parker to take a picture of it. And Peter Parker's like, just put him down, man. And Flash gets so upset that he decides he's going to fight Peter Parker because Peter Parker won't take a picture. And I just thought, it's not until later that Flash is kind of fleshed out as an actual human being character. In that scene, I felt like he's just like supposed to be as much of a villain as possible. And I don't really buy that a lot of times when that happens. When it just didn't feel real to me for him to be holding this kid upside down and then immediately want to get into a fist fight with Peter Parker because he wouldn't take a picture.
Well, he did call him by his first name.
Oh yeah, was it Eugene or something like that?
Yeah,
that's true, I suppose.
But no, I know what you're saying, and I think even the Flash in Raimi's movies kind of had that a little bit,
right?
But I think this one felt a little more forced,
right,
than even Raimi's did.
What do you think?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
What do you think about Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy?
I liked her a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I think her and Andrew Garfield have a good chemistry. They work really well together.
Yeah, she played the character well. She came across as a likable character, one that you cared about.
Did you know much about Gwen Stacy before you watched the movie?
I know that that she and Peter dated before Mary Jane, and that she dies in the comics.
Right. That's about all I knew.
I knew she had blonde hair.
Right. Blonde hair,
that's about it.
And dies. That's pretty much all I knew. I knew, of Captain Stacy, who is her father, who's a police captain. And I knew, the only thing I knew about him, too, was that he was in the comics and that he dies. So going
I didn't even know about him at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think I actually have the comic. I think somebody got it for me as a present. I have the comic where he dies. And the cool thing about that one is it's a little different than it is in this movie. By the way, spoilers if you haven't seen The Amazing Spider-Man. We're going to talk about the whole film. So, sorry if we've ruined anything so far, but if you haven't seen The Amazing Spider-Man, check it out, watch it, come back, listen to the podcast.
Yeah. We said Captain Stacy dies in the comics.
Right.
So
So
if you're listening at this point, we already warned you, and
that's right.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll give you a couple extra seconds to hit pause or stop. So anyway, the difference from the movie and the comics is when Captain Stacy died in the comics, up until the very end, we as readers don't know that Captain Stacy knows who Peter is, but he says something to him like, "Take care of them, Peter," or something like that, and then Spider-Man in his little thought bubble says like he knew who I was all along, which was kind of neat. But in this one, it's he finds out right before he meets his demise. Dennis,
which I liked a lot. I liked that scene. They take off. They got him cornered.
Right.
Oh wait, no, they shocked him with the from the helicopter. Mm-hmm. So he's like on the ground, unconscious, and takes off his mask, and
they're about to handcuff him, I think.
Yeah, and Peter explains, hey, Gwen's at Oscorp, Lizard's going, and I'm the only one that can save her. So, and he lets him go at that point.
Right. Yeah, that was a great scene. Really liked that scene. Dennis Leary as Captain Stacy was really good. He brought a little bit of humor to the movie. And I think, he didn't, he doesn't have like a whole lot to do. He's basically just supposed to be Gwen Stacy's dad and this police captain who's trying to hunt down the vigilante who calls himself Spider-Man. So it's not really, his character again, like doesn't really have a whole lot to do until the end. But I thought Dennis Leary did a good job with it.
Yeah, me too. I love the thing that really stuck out with me with him, which like I said, when I saw it in theater, I didn't really remember that much, and but the dinner scene,
yeah,
which I didn't remember at all, and that's a good scene.
Yeah, I love that dinner scene because Captain Stacy calls out Peter, or calls out. He doesn't even realize he's doing it, but he tells Peter that what he's doing is not necessarily heroic. Peter thinks that as Spider-Man, he's being a hero to New York City. He's protecting people, but really what he's been doing is trying to hunt down Uncle Ben's killer. And Captain Stacy calls him out on that and says, this guy's hunting down car thieves who all look the same, like he's got some personal vendetta. And then it's pretty much then that it clicks in Peter's brain that is what he's been doing, and he's not really being a protector of the city, and he needs to perhaps remedy that. It's a nice scene.
Yeah, you had brought that up to me earlier as well, and I watched for it this time, and it's very quick.
Yeah.
It's a very quick moment where Peter's realizing that, but you see the camera zooming in slowly on him, and just this realization, but it's only like a 2-second shot.
Right. But then right after that,
I think you're right.
Yeah, he apologizes to Captain Stacy after that, because at that point Gwen is trying to pull him out of the room because it's getting a little heated, and I think it does. It's quick, but it dawns on him, and I think that's why number one, he's trying to impress her father, doesn't really want to upset him, and number two, I think it's because he realizes that what he's saying is true, and that's when he apologizes and said, I didn't mean to offend you or anything that wasn't my intention.
And he's getting kind of defensive, I mean, in his mind, Captain Stacy's attacking him because he's attacking Spider-Man.
Sure, absolutely.
So, but yeah, he did very well as a captain and an intimidating father.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have wanted to date Gwen. I thought he would have been a little more mad though when he walked in the first time he met him, and Peter Parker was in her room.
Right, with the door closed.
With the door closed, and he had come in through the window.
Right. Yeah, I saw that going a little differently, too, when I first saw it, and instead he just kind of, shrugs it off, sort of, I suppose. But I think it does catch him off guard a little. He opens the door and he's what's going on here?
Yeah, but Peter remarks, it's nice to meet you, and he's like, nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that's what I'd be saying to a guy in my daughter's bedroom.
What do you think about Rhys Ifans as Dr. Kurt Connors?
He was good. I wanted to see what's the guy's name from
Dylan Baker.
Yes,
yeah,
I was really interested to see Dylan Baker's portrayal,
mm-hmm.
and they dragged him out so long, through 3 movies.
He wasn't in the first one, I don't think.
You mean this? Was he not in the first one?
I don't think he was in the first one. He's in the second one. He's in the third one, but I don't believe he's in the first one.
Yeah, you're right. My bad.
That's okay. It would have been his third movie. If he had become Lizard in Spider-Man 4, which I think was the plan, he would have been in the 3 movies.
Yeah, I think it was the plan, too. I think when they rebooted, they were probably, how are we going to do this? What villain are we going to use? And they just kind of went to...
Right.
It's just an assumption, but the one, the Lizard...
And that's something I actually forgot to mention in the beginning. There were plans to make a Spider-Man 4. I think they were working on that film. They had already cast John Malkovich to play the Vulture.
Yeah. And Tobey Maguire actually, it was literally a week or less before they announced that they were rebooting it. He announced that they were moving forward with Spider-Man 4 on a talk show.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden,
so something happened, yeah. Some producers or the studio or whatever decided that rather than moving on with Spider-Man 4, they would just reboot the series completely. And they got a different director and a different cast, which is fine. It would have been interesting to see Spider-Man 4, to see what happened in that film. I would hope that it's better than Spider-Man 3. But I think originally I think it was going to be Vulture and the Lizard, and they just decided to keep the Lizard part of the story in the reboot. I liked Rhys Ifans as Dr. Kurt Connors. I actually thought he did a really good job. When he was first announced that he was going to be playing the Lizard, I remember thinking that was an interesting choice. The only movies that I really knew him from were Notting Hill, where he plays Hugh Grant's kind of stoner, slacker roommate, which is a more comedic role than this. And then also from The Replacements. I think he's like the kicker, I want to say, on that football team in that movie. Also another comedic role. So I didn't really see him playing a Spider-Man villain when they announced it. But he plays serious very well. And I also thought he did, if I'm assuming that's his voice when he's the Lizard. I don't know if they did any motion capture or not with him or if it was just all CGI created. But I'm assuming he did the actual voice of the Lizard, and he did a great job. So...
Yeah, he did.
The designs of the Lizard, however, I kind of have a small issue with. In the comics, the Lizard has more of a snout, like an actual lizard. And I'm curious as to why they decided not to go that route. My only guess is that, they wanted him to be able to speak like a human being, and they wanted to maybe have that type of mouth movement, and so with a snout, maybe that makes it a little more difficult.
Right.
Or maybe they wanted to keep his eyes... I don't know. My only guess is they wanted to make it somewhat human so that they could keep kind of the emotion in the face and everything. But in my opinion, I think it was kind of a misstep.
Do you think they were kind of going for a more of a serious tone, too, after The Dark Knight?
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. I mean, this movie has a darker feel than any of the previous Spider-Man movies. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think, Dark Knight comes out, and it's almost kind of a shame because certain movies really shouldn't. This one is fine having a darker tone, but I do feel like not every superhero movie needs to have a darker tone. And I do think Dark Knight, as good as The Dark Knight was, it has kind of maybe hurt some other superhero films, perhaps. Or maybe some, I don't know. But
I know what you're saying, and I agree. The Raimi movies were so bright.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man as a character is not Batman.
Right. No, not at all.
So...
And actually, to their credit, I think they did a good job of kind of blending that in. This is probably the darkest in terms of tone and also just in terms of actual light. the darkest of all the Spider-Man movies. Like, most of this movie, I feel, takes place at night, whereas Spider-Man is not necessarily... He's not like Batman, where he really only comes out at night, you know? Like, Batman is almost like a nocturnal superhero. Not always. You know, in The Dark Knight Rises, he was out there fighting in the daylight. But Spider-Man is kind of... Anytime he's around and something happens, he'll go out and be Spider-Man if he needs to be.
Right.
It doesn't always happen to happen at night. And so this movie kind of mostly happens at night, I feel like. And so it does kind of have that darker
I'm going to take it further and say I think, you know, this movie is one of the more darker superhero movies. Is darker than Thor.
Yeah.
Captain America. You know, this one was going more for the gritty Nolan style.
Right.
So I'm glad Man of Steel didn't... They grittied it up a little bit.
Man of Steel is definitely the darkest of all the other Superman films.
Yes. And I was afraid that they were going to go much more darker than they did, and I'm glad they kind of met in the middle there.
It'll be interesting to see how dark the new one is.
Yeah.
Batman versus Superman, which I'm hoping... You know, I'm worried that... Not to get off topic here, but I'm worried that they're going to keep that the title, Batman versus Superman, because everybody's calling it that. And I could see them being like, well, everybody's calling it this already. We should probably just go ahead and title it that. That's what everybody knows it as now. So I hope they come out with like a title soon, so that way we can start calling it that. I mean, they've got 2 years, so who knows? But I just Batman
really
versus Superman is just such a lame title, I think, to me. So.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Real quick, not to... Well, you want to talk about it at the end? You want to talk about because it was just released a couple days ago, the photo of Ben Affleck in the Batman suit.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
You want to do it at the end, or you want to talk about it now?
Talk about it now since it's up.
All right, we'll talk about it now. Take a little break from Spider-Man for a second and talk about it now. What do you think of it?
I love it.
I do too. It's one of the coolest Batman suits I think I've seen. I mean, I got nothing against the Nolan Batman suits. I think they're awesome. I think they're perfect for what they are. But this suit looks incredible, in my opinion.
I agree. We've got some Frank Miller going.
Yep.
I was hoping for more of a Jim Lee style.
Uh-huh.
But if they're going with a Frank Miller-inspired story, then do the Frank Miller costume.
Right.
I wanted a different costume than all black. I wanted to see the gray, and it looks like we're going to get that. So
yeah, I think the photograph is black and white.
It is.
I did a little brightening on it, and it seems to be black and white. However, the cowl and the cape and the gloves all seem to have a darker color than the rest of the body. So
right.
I do think we're going to get at least a two-color suit, like whether it'll be a kind of a lighter black, which is gray, I guess, a gray and a black suit or what. I think it'll be great, and it'll be something we haven't really seen before. I mean, since 1989, every Batman suit has been pretty much black, other than the Joel Schumacher suits that always happen at like the end of those two movies where they're like silver and black or whatever. But we won't really count those because they're just stupid.
Right.
So yeah, this and the big bat symbol on his chest, I think looks amazing.
Yeah, that's another Frank Miller inspired part right there.
The Batmobile's a little tough to see because they didn't reveal the whole thing. But
I think that was kind of it was not really a reveal of the Batmobile.
No.
It was a reveal of Batman.
Yeah, which is what we really wanted anyway.
Yeah.
But from the little bit that you can see of it, I think it looks pretty cool. It looks like it's a nice cross between Nolan's Tumbler and something out of not necessarily Tim Burton's Batmobile, but almost something out of like an animated series or something, or out of the comic books, really.
It looks a little more Nolan-ish than I wanted it to be.
Uh-huh.
I was hoping
with
they'd
the
go
big tires and everything.
Yeah, you kind of got the Transformer style, just the layer on layer of stuff. But I was kind of hoping they'd go back more towards the Burton-esque. But it's fine. It's Batman.
Yeah, I hope we get to see kind of a full view of it fairly soon, just because I'm curious about it. But I can't wait to see an image of Superman and Henry Cavill as Superman and Ben Affleck as Batman in the same picture. Oh, it's gonna be incredible. I can't. It's almost too much of a tease to get the picture of Ben Affleck in the Batman suit so early.
Yeah,
because it's not. I don't think we're going to even get. We're not even going to get like a teaser trailer for this movie for another year, and that teaser probably will have very minimal like footage in it. So it's killing me.
I was kind of hoping. No, I wasn't kind of hoping. I wanted him to have long ears,
right?
Like in Arkham Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I saw Batman in Arkham Asylum, I was like, "That's amazing!"
Right? Yeah, I love that suit, and it has kind of the gray and like black / dark blue kind of color tones to it. That suit, but it's still like an armor. I was really hoping for something from the Arkham Asylum games too, like kind of, which it looks similar, but with the short ears and everything. It's
and you're with it's a Frank Miller inspired. Frank Miller's Batman has the small ears, so I'm totally cool with it. It looks great.
Yeah, I think it'll be awesome, and he looks awesome in the suit.
Yes,
and everything,
yes,
so.
he looks awesome.
It's great,
and he's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that was seeing that image. I put myself in a burglar or a villain's shoes, and I was like, I would be a melted puddle of fear if I just saw him towering over me.
Which is what you want from a Batman.
You imagine, trying to punch him, and he wouldn't even move.
You just break your hand.
Yes.
Right.
You want to get back to Spider-Man?
Yeah, might as well.
All
since
right.
That's what this episode's about.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Risa Fons. We've talked about Andrew Garfield. We've talked about Emma Stone. Let's talk about Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben.
Okay. I thought I liked his performance a lot. He brought some little more upbeaty humor to the character. He had a great presence with Andrew Garfield and Sally Field too. He pulled it off very well.
I agree. When they announced that he was cast as Uncle Ben, I was like, that's perfect. That's just a perfect choice. He has, like you said, he's got that kind of lighthearted side to him where he can joke around with Peter, and he can be a great dad, even though he's his uncle, but he's a father figure to Peter. And Peter even says that. I think he's like, "You're a pretty great dad," which I really am glad they put in there.
Yeah, and in the voicemail, he calls him son.
Yeah.
He brings the intimidation too when he came home late.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he definitely had that authority figure presence, which I knew he could do that with having played like President Bartlett on The West Wing and everything. One of the things that I didn't like the first time I saw the movie, but I kind of am more okay with now, is his death scene. In this film, a burglar or a robber or whatever robs a convenience store and is running across the street. Ben is out there looking for Peter because they just had an argument, and the robber trips or something, and his gun falls down, and Ben lunges after the gun. They kind of get into a little bit of a wrestling match, and the robber shoots Uncle Ben. And first time I saw it, I was kind of like, well, that was stupid. Just because from a regular person's point of view, your life is worth more than the $100 he probably got from that convenience store, which is insured anyway, So you don't want to ever put yourself out there to, they always say, if you ever work a retail job or whatever, when they talk about being robbed, they always say, don't try to be a hero. And so the first time I saw it, I just thought, why did you do that? That was just the dumbest thing you could have done. But watching it again, I realized that he had just gotten done talking to Peter about how Richard Parker, his father, had this this motto, and it was basically, with great power comes great responsibility, but he worded it a little differently, which was, I think he said, if you have the ability to help people, then you had a moral obligation to do so. And so I think in that moment, that's exactly what went through Uncle Ben's head, was that I have this opportunity to potentially save other people. I need to do something about it. And so watching it the second time around, I was a little bit more okay with it. But the first time I saw it, it bugged me.
Mm-hmm. You know, technically, if you think about it, it's the cashier's fault.
Yeah, that's very true. Wouldn't give
He's
Peter Parker
running
that
outside
penny.
going, "Stop that man!"
Yeah. Well, that's true, yeah. And again, the cashier, maybe it's a convenience store, so it's not a corporate-owned type of entity like all the places I've worked, but maybe, so maybe he's not insured or whatever. Maybe he's going to lose his job because he got robbed, but he was not a very good cashier. He left that cash register open while he went down and picked up that stuff off the floor.
and he insulted Peter. Did your daddy not give you enough milk money?
Right. Gosh. So, and then asked Peter for help. Yeah, so that's...
He got the milk.
He did. Yeah, he got the milk. So he's actually an accessory to the robbery. No, I don't know. I liked in this film how he kind of comes up with the idea to be Spider-Man, or to have a costume, which was how he's getting chased by those criminals and he falls through the roof into the abandoned wrestling building. I don't know what you would call it. Excuse me. But he sees that.
That's a good description.
Right. He sees that poster on the wall, and it's like a wrestling mask, and it looks just like Spider-Man's eyes and everything. So I thought that was kind of cool how they did that. And it almost seemed like kind of a little bit of an homage to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, how he had the wrestling match in the first movie and everything. The human spider against Bonesaw.
Right. I wonder if do you know how he came up with the costume in the comics?
I don't, actually, and it might have been, he might have done a wrestling match or something.
Yeah, I'm wondering, since it was in both.
I'm sorry to all the Spider-Man fanatics out there who are letting down right now by not knowing that, but let us know if you happen to know. Leave a comment or something.
Yeah, how did Spider-Man originally get his
come up with the
idea?
costume? Yeah. One more character to talk about before we move on. Sally Field as Aunt May. I really liked Sally Field. I thought she did a great job. I liked that they went with a kind of a younger Aunt May this time around. Rosemary Harris in the first Spider-Man films had more of a grandmotherly type feel to her. There was a bigger age difference between Peter Parker and Aunt May, and it, she was great, but I like that they have a younger Aunt May this time around. It's somebody who is more of a mother to Peter Parker, and somebody who you have a different relationship with your mom than you do your grandmother, And I think.
But do you think that Uncle Ben and Aunt May were a little bit separated in age?
In the first films, or in this one?
No, these.
In this film, no, I thought they were fairly similar in age. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, looking back, Martin Sheen appeared a little bit older to me than Sally Field, which is fine. I mean,
it's possible.
Yeah. But anyway, Martin Sheen was not really grandfather status for Peter, but I felt like he was kind of in between that and dad, grandfather and dad, where Sally Field was definitely more mother.
Right. I'm trying to see. Martin Sheen is 73 years old. Sally Field is 67. So yeah, there is a bit of an age difference between them. Not a whole lot, but about
not too bad.
6 years.
She doesn't look 67.
No.
But yeah, she had a lot of good scenes where she portrayed just that worried mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she won't. Yeah, he tells her, don't wait up for me, and she's like, I can't go to sleep.
I can't sleep.
Yeah.
Some good moments there.
That's such a heartbreaking kind of. Those scenes are kind of tough for us to watch because we know why he's not telling her that he's Spider-Man. Because number one, she would worry.
Yeah.
And number two, even though I don't think he's realized it quite yet in these movies, he could bring potential danger to her if she knew.
Which I think she knows. I haven't seen the second Spider-Man yet, so I don't know if that's brought up. But at the end of this movie, that you have the newscast where she's in there in the kitchen right before he comes in, and they're talking about how Dr. Connors is behind bars.
Right.
And Peter comes in beat up again, and it wasn't so much that time for her as worried as much as I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah.
So it seemed like she kind of knew.
Yeah, I just had it on my TV just now, and I saw that scene, and it does. He comes in, he's got all these cuts and bruises on his face, and she just looks at him, and they have this little wordless exchange, and then he pulls out the eggs that she had asked about earlier. So it does kind of hint at the fact that she might know. I've seen the second one, but we'll just leave it for another episode.
Okay. So what do you think about the story?
Story I thought was pretty good. They focus a little bit in the beginning, especially on his parents, and then I feel like that storyline is kind of dropped. And I feel like the main reason they kind of focused on his parents was to introduce him to Kurt Connors. It felt like to me like there were some deleted scenes, and I think there might have been. Some of this stuff seems like it's wrapped up in like the second one. They have this whole thing about how these people are coming after Richard Parker, and so that's why he dumps. Well, I don't want to say dumps. That's why he gives Peter to Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and then they are killed. Does it say how they die in this movie?
I did not come across that.
Okay. Because it talks about it in the second one. I just couldn't remember if they talked about how they died in this one.
You know what? They did kind of allude to it, I think, with Dr. Connors talking to the his boss guy.
Uh-huh.
Do you know his name? Did he have a name?
I know the actor's name. It's like Irfan Khan or something like that.
Anyway, he says something like, Robert Parker, right?
I thought it was Richard Parker, was it? Not Richard Parker?
Yes, it is Richard Parker. Richard Parker was standing, like you were or whatever in the suit, and he was like saying the same stuff you were, and you know what happened to him or something. It was almost like they had been murdered by Norman Osborn.
Right. But they don't specifically say how.
No.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
For some reason I was thinking it was a car crash, and if it was, they changed that for the second movie. But anyway, it's not super important. The whole idea is, this kid who was left by his parents at his uncle and aunt's house, and then his parents died. He never really understood why they dumped him there. He never understood why they had to leave and all that. And so he's somewhat obsessed with trying to find that out. And who wouldn't be, And so when he discovers his father's old briefcase, he discovers that he and Kurt Connors were working on a formula together. And so he goes to try to find Kurt Connors. And so that kind of... And then he works with Kurt Connors in kind of trying to figure out that formula. And so it sets up the whole story of him meeting Kurt Connors and the lizard being born and everything. So I think the story is decent. I think it's pretty good. It's entertaining. It just it doesn't quite wrap up. It's obvious that they were thinking, we'll have a sequel. We can tie some of this stuff up in the sequel, or possibly even the third one. What did you think about the story?
I liked it. I like the movie as a whole.
Uh-huh.
And a big part of that is the story. If the story's not good, then it's near
it's not worth
impossible
watching.
to like the movie. Yeah. You had the origin of Spider-Man again, which watching in the theater was hard because, like we said, we were so close to the Raimi movies.
Right.
Watching it a second time, I knew what was coming, and it was more enjoyable to watch. It wasn't as much of a chore.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked, how they were going about talking. The villain in this is genetically altered, just like Spider-Man.
Right.
Which, most or a lot of the villains are. But you've got both the hero and the antagonist are new to their abilities. and it's not just an addition like Doc Ock, in Spider-Man 2 was not genetic. It was a machine that was added to him.
Right.
This is a change in the body for both of them, and
right. And I feel like that's something we've seen. Not that it's bad, but it's something we've seen before in other kind of hero movies. Kind of the same thing happens to the hero as it does the villain, and the hero decides to use it for good, and the villain decides to use it for evil. Although in this film, Kurt Connors is so... It not only affects his body, but it affects his mind. And so he feels like it's good, He feels stronger, he feels smarter, he feels better. So he wants to give that formula to everyone, which would turn everyone into giant lizards, and it would just be chaos. Right. And so it's like he's kind of gone insane a little bit, and he doesn't really realize that what he's doing is a terrible thing.
Yeah, I mean, he when he's talking to the camera, he says the human race they're weak, and why would I not share this?
Right.
Where you can become stronger and smarter and all this other stuff. So.
One thing I really did like about Dr. Kurt Connors' character was that it was a little different than how it was in the comics, I think. In the comics, I believe Kurt Connors is obsessed with trying to figure out a way to regrow his arm or to get his arm back. And he's, doing all this, working with lizard DNA to try to come up with a cure, basically, for his missing arm. And in this movie, that's not necessarily the case. Yes, he wants. He said to the group of interns that he wants to fix himself, I think is how he puts it. But he's not so far gone that he's willing to test this stuff out on himself. It's not until he's kind of bullied into it that he does it. That character that you were talking about is kind of Norman Osborn's right-hand man, it seems like. Right-hand man. He tells Kurt Connors, now that the formula is successful, they've tested it out on this rat, it's time to move to human trials. And Kurt Connors is like, are you insane? And he says, just take it to a local VA hospital, tell him it's the flu shot, and give it to him. And
right, and the haste for that was the fact that Norman Osborn was dying.
He's dying, and he needs to know if he can use it on himself. Right, of course. So Kurt Connors is appalled by that idea. He's like, I'm not going to do that. And I think it's the same scene that you were talking about. Richard Parker was right here saying the same thing you are. And so in this film, Connors realizes that he really doesn't have a choice. He's not going to go do that to these innocent people. So in order to kind of keep his research and keep his job and all that, he is kind of forced to test it on somebody. And so he tests it on himself. And then it has terrible side effects. So he's kind of almost a sympathetic villain, really, because it's somebody who started off not necessarily being such a bad guy and then became a villain. Which I think they allude to at the end of the movie when he saves Peter Parker from falling.
Right. Yeah, he still goes to prison.
Sure.
But back to the scene where he grows that arm. That was such a good scene. The music and everything in it, where he wakes up and his arm's there, and he starts peeling back the shedded skin.
Right.
And I got a real sense watching that scene of what it would be like to have something missing like your arm. And to just see it like a miracle right there again. That was a really powerful scene for me.
And he does a really good job in it. Yeah, it seems to me it's very obviously a glove that he's wearing, but it's I think it looks better than it would have if they'd CGI'd it or something.
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean? How did it? I didn't really
when he kind of moves his hand. The way it bunches up and stuff kind of looks like it's a glove over top of his hand, which I'm pretty sure it is. But it's still that's nitpicky. I can get past that. It's a good scene.
Yeah.
So, because he injects himself, he becomes a lizard, and then Peter Parker feels he has this responsibility to stop Connors because he helped him come up with the formula. So in a way, Peter kind of feels like he created the lizard, or at least he helped create the lizard, so he needs to help put a stop to it.
Well, not just that, but, you go back to where you brought up the dinner scene.
Right.
And Captain Stacy gets him to realize, that he's got this power.
Yeah.
And he's just using it for himself. And that was kind of close to where, it was actually. It was right, that was the scene right before the bridge. So right after he has that conversation with Peter, then the lizard's on the bridge, and he goes, and that's kind of when Peter Parker's
starts becoming an actual hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good scene to the bridge. I like that. It's the first sighting of the lizard. You don't see. They do those kind of. It's either shots of the lizard from far away, or they're like glances of his hand and stuff. You don't really see the lizard yet. Kind of monster movie feeling. But then Spider-Man has to save those cars from falling off the bridge, and there's a character there who's yelling that his kid is in the car, which I think last time we talked about this. I didn't say, by the way, that we've actually recorded this episode already, or well, I should say we attempted to record this episode already, but I didn't hit record. So we had a great conversation for like 2 hours about this film that no one will get to hear now. So anyway,
I've got my part.
Right, I just don't have my part. If you want to hear just John's part, we could post that if you like. So anyway, this character is. I think we made fun of this character because he sees a giant
kid in
lizard.
The car.
Yeah, he abandons his car with his child inside. He sees a giant lizard coming, and he's like, "I'm out of here. Every man for
you're
himself.
on your own, kid.
You're on your own." And he jumps out, and then he's like, "Oh crap!" Because the lizard knocks the car over the bridge.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't think he was going to throw it off the bridge.
My bad. Yeah. So, but it's a good scene for Spider-Man because it's really the first person that he saves, I want to say, Up until that point, I think he was mostly just stopping car thieves and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's such a great moment, something we hadn't really seen before in a Spider-Man film where, especially for this kid, I think you mentioned this. This kid has never seen Spider-Man before, doesn't know who Spider-Man is. It's not like us who grew up with this comic book character. So this giant lizard has thrown the car over the bridge, and then the next thing he sees is this masked, kind of weird-looking man.
Yeah, like a bug
jumping on the car. So he's obviously freaking out. And the first thing Peter does, which I thought was really smart, is takes off his mask, and he's like, "Look, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy." Yeah. And then he tosses the mask to the kid, and the whole scene with him telling the kid, put on the mask, it makes you strong. I thought that was a really nice kind of human.
Yeah, he's saving a kid.
Yeah,
and I liked how even though he hasn't seen Spider-Man, and technically I don't think the kid would do it so much as it was for I think fans.
Yeah,
when he throws him the mask and he's looking at it, and he's got this. I can't believe I'm holding Spider-Man's mask kind of face.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah. What do you think about, we'll just kind of go through the action scenes real quick. The fight scene in the school. I think that might be one of my favorite fight scenes just because there's a few great Spider-Man moments in there where, especially, I'm thinking of specifically the part where Spider-Man is webbing up the lizard just constantly, and it shows him crawling all over his body. He looked very bug-like, spider-like there, and I thought that was actually pretty cool. And then, of course, you have Stan Lee's cameo, which I thought was great, too. It's kind of a cliche thing where he's wearing the headphones and doesn't hear it, but I thought it actually worked really well.
Yeah. And, he's a librarian. He's doing his job. He's in a school, so everything fit there. Bringing that up, I felt like the reveal to the lizard, because bringing that up that he was at the school.
Right.
That's when he found out that Spider-Man was Peter Parker. So that's what he was doing at the school.
Right.
And I felt like the reveal to the lizard was pretty cheap.
Oh, yeah?
Which was the fact that Peter Parker had put on his camera property of Peter Parker.
Yeah. Dumb move.
And that's how the Lizard finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I felt like they could have done something a little better with that.
Yeah, I do too. Maybe they could have had him pull off his mask or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, what can you do?
Come up with a better story.
Yeah, I guess. Write better? I guess that's what you can do.
I had a question earlier about how he knew the lizard was in the sewers.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, you see lizards going down there. And you brought up that it was kind of like the penguins in Batman Returns.
Right. That's just what they do.
Yeah, but he goes down there and puts the webbing.
Down like a whole bunch of different pipes.
Yeah.
And kind of hangs out in the central like web location.
Yeah.
Which actually I thought was pretty smart.
Yeah,
and
it was.
we also mentioned last time we talked about this that he's sitting there playing a video game on his phone, like playing.
Yeah, that was perfect.
I don't remember what it is, but
it was
but
like,
that's exactly what a teenager would probably do is just hang out and play on his phone.
Yeah, he's passing time. Who knows how long he had been there, and that was great. He just chilled out on his webbing, and bringing up that would be something a teenager would do. Watching the film for the first time in the theater, that was a big problem that I had with Peter Parker was how mouthy he was, and his choice of humor was just kind of silly to me.
Right,
but
you talking about like when he's wisecracking to like bad guys and stuff?
Yeah, especially the first time you see him with the suit and the guy that's in the car,
right,
at the valet parking. But watching it again this time, I really got that this is a Spider-Man for today's generation, and
that's also kind of Spider-Man's MO. He's in the comics. He always made wisecracks and jokes about the people he was fighting or whatever.
Sure, but I don't know. I felt like he was kind of taking it a little overboard.
I gotcha.
But I'm cool with it. I think it fits.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think I don't think I had a problem with it. I knew they were going to kind of do that. I knew some fans had problems with Tobey Maguire's version of Spider-Man not doing that enough. So I think they kind of felt like they had to make up for it in this film. Kind of going in that same direction, they introduced web shooters in this film, which is something they didn't do in the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. They had organic webs in those previous films, which I never had a problem with. But
yeah, I always loved that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Genetically altered, being bit by a spider.
Right.
He can climb walls because he has little hairs on his fingertips.
Right.
Why would he not be able to produce webbing?
Right. So, never had a problem with it, but some fans did because that's not how it was in the comics. So, in this one, they decided to introduce web shooters, which I thought was cool, and I'm cool with it. But my big problem with it is that he didn't come up with the webbing himself. He only came up with the shooter.
He says he does, though.
He does, which is a lie. But because we clearly see he's watching like a video online about Oscorp's webbing, has this tensile strength or whatever, and then he orders the stuff, and you see him like pulling like a little pellet of it out of the box, and then he's like trying. It's like a montage scene. You see him trying to figure out a way to turn it into a web shooter, and like he has a couple of mishaps and whatnot, and then he finally gets it. So he didn't really design the webbing at all, which I thought. I feel like that's a mistake because number one, Peter Parker is supposed to be kind of a genius and able to come up with those things kind of on his own. And number two, I feel like it can be traced back to Oscorp. He leaves those webs just hanging off those buildings all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure people could get them all. Like, I'm sure window cleaners have to deal with them constantly. So I'm sure somewhere somebody's gonna be like, "Hey, this is Oscorp's like webbing," and maybe they'll find they'll do a Google search or something and figure out that Peter Parker has ordered 17 cases of Oscorp webbing. I don't know.
That is a good point. Why does this kid keep ordering this webbing? Another 1,000 boxes to Peter Parker. Yeah.
Unless he's figured out, unless he like maybe kind of ordered some of the Oscorp webbing and then figured out how to make it himself. But they don't show that. They just show him ordering it and then developing the web shooter.
Well, we're going to have to go with your idea.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he'd be figured out.
Yeah.
What did you think of how he was bit by the spider versus the Raimi version?
I think they're both kind of coincidental, perhaps, In the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, it's just like the spider just happened to get out of its little cage and happens to be right above Peter Parker and bite him. With this one, it makes a little bit more sense because he is kind of sneaking into this room. And this room just happens to be full of radioactive spiders, I guess, that fall on him. But
well, sort of. I mean, he was looking for his dad's research.
Right.
And that room had the symbols.
Right.
So, and his dad was working on the spiders, so...
Yeah, and then they never really brought that up again after that, right? Like, he finds that room with his dad's stuff, and then he never really wonders about it?
Yeah. Well... I mean, wasn't the research was the same thing that Dr. Connors was working on?
I think that it was multiple things. I think, because is the research Dr. Connors working on the one with the symbols, or was that primarily for the spiders?
I don't know. I was thinking it was just genetic engineering.
Right. Which it might have been. Maybe they were working on different sorts of animals.
So... I don't think it's as coincident.
Yeah, perhaps you're right. I mean, I think it does work a little better in this film, perhaps. It was super creepy seeing all those spiders fall on him.
Yes.
And I thought he did a really good job of shaking them off. He held it together a lot better than I would have if I had been in that situation.
Yeah, I would have been through the glass. They would have found me pretty quick.
Yeah.
This guy's in this room. I do like how in the Raimi movie, though, Mary Jane, she points out that a spider's missing.
Mm-hmm.
So that immediately gets your attention in that movie. So after he does the school, Dr. Connors goes back to the sewers. And that's when he's talking to the camera and is like, humans are weak.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share this with everyone.
Right. And Peter Parker sees that somehow. I guess he follows him into the sewer or something at some point.
Yeah, he gets into his little work area after the initial meeting in the sewer when he was playing the game. He sees all the plans and stuff on the walls and everything, and in the machine that's used to make the cloud, and that's when the lizard is going out. And why was the SWAT after him?
Well, because it's Spider-Man. They put, remember they said he was issuing a warrant for the rest of the vigilante known as Spider-Man. So I think it's just because it's Spider-Man, right?
No, I'm talking about remember when the lizard came out of Oscorp?
Oh, yes. Or he comes out of the sewer, he's going to Oscorp, right?
That's right.
He's getting shot up by the SWAT team. It's a very good question. I'm not sure why they were after him. I was going to try to watch it. All right, so Peter's in the sewer. He sees the video, and it says Oscorp Tower, and it's circled, so he knows what's going down. And then it cuts to, we have a confirmed sighting, sir. The lizard's heading toward Canal Street. So they just start going after the lizard. I guess they just believe now that there's a giant lizard. I guess
because I don't remember
people.
Yeah, I don't remember a scene where they were like,
"Oh, Peter Parker was right."
Maybe
that got cut out or something. I don't know. So they just know there's been a sighting, and so they know that he's coming. I guess, and that's why the police are there. Interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, this whole thing, that's one of the other things about the lizard that we didn't talk about the design of the lizard, is that I'm glad that even for a brief moment they put him in the white lab coat.
Yeah.
Because, typically I think the lizard always has...
Actually, they did it twice.
They did do it twice, yeah.
Because when he was coming up out of the sewer in the school, it was on him wearing too.
Yep.
So he has to have like a whole closet of lab coats.
Yeah, he's got tons of white lab coats. I wish that they had kind of kept him in it for longer than just like a brief moment, even though it was those 2 moments. Just because it's the lizard's signature style. He's wearing it while he's fighting those SWAT team cops and everything, but then he just takes it off because it's all been ripped apart, and so then he goes back to being just the regular old naked lizard. So anyway, so then, this is our final act of the film. We're getting to the big showdown on the top of Oscorp Tower, and Lizard, it's kind of a countdown clock. Lizard has set that formula that's going to turn everyone into lizards, into this machine that for some reason Oscorp has decided to hang on to. They talk about this machine in the beginning of the movie. They talk about how I think it was developed by Richard Parker and Kurt Connors, and it was like, imagine if you could, the whole idea behind it was you could send a cure through kind of the air and cure everyone all in one big swoop. But the problem was, what if it got into the wrong hands? What if somebody put a toxin into it? Or, there's no option to opt out. If you don't want the cure, I think he says you can't run away from a cloud. Mm-hmm. So they've decided to kind of shelve that program, but they've left that machine there, like, on. It looked like it was powered up or whatever, just hanging out in the office for probably 15 years or so. Who knows? Conveniently for the lizard to use right now at this moment. So that's what he's done. He's taken that machine. He's taken his formula up to the top of Oscorp Tower, and he's going to turn all of New York City into giant lizards. So of course,
because it's a superior
species, I guess.
Yeah.
So who can stop the lizard? Spider-Man. And this is actually where Spider-Man is trying to get to the lizard, but I think it's because the police are trying, the police are going after the lizard now that we know that, but they're also after Spider-Man because he is this vigilante, and they've been told that they need to arrest him. So there's helicopters, and he gets shot in the leg, I believe, and goes down, and the cops are there to arrest him, and there's that awesome fight scene.
He actually gets shot in the leg after they let him go.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Does he get shocked? Is that what? So how?
Yes.
What? Oh, he gets shocked. I see.
Yeah, right in the chest, and he falls down, and then that's when the fight scene you're talking about.
Right, and that ends with Captain Stacy there. He's pretty much beat up all the police officers, and Captain Stacy has a gun on him. And at this point, his mask has been taken off, and that's when Captain Stacy realizes that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, the young man who's dating his daughter, and Spider-Man pleads with him, Gwen is at Oscorp. I have to go. I need to stop the lizard.
And she was there. She was getting an antidote.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is very important.
Right, and that's something we didn't talk about either. Gwen Stacy in this movie is actually smarter than Peter Parker.
It's alluded, yes.
Yeah, it's alluded to. When he kind of sneaks into Oscorp the first time and talks to Dr. Connors, he asks who it is, and she says he's the second brightest. How does she word it? He's the second top student in blah, 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 or whatever. And he's like, are you sure about that? And she's like, pretty sure.
Yeah.
Because she's talking about herself, which I think is really funny.
That scene, too, I was like, why isn't Peter telling Dr. Connors that he's Peter Parker? But he does that later.
Right. And so she works at Oscorp. She's like the head intern or whatever. Who knows how long she's been there. She knows how to make an antidote, so that's what she's doing. And so
you kind of get a moment too, and I think they were kind of trying to pull Sam Raimi here. The scene in Spider-Man 2 where Doc Ock is on the operating table,
right?
And Sam Raimi geniusly decided to bring his horror talent to the table,
right?
And just do a classic Raimi horror scene. This kind of it felt like they were trying to do a little bit of a horror scene when Lizard comes through and you've got the music and then
she's
pops
hiding in the closet.
Yeah, she's hiding in the closet and you've got the breathing and you don't see him and then he pops out. Which was fine.
Yeah, I like that. That was a good scene. And then it builds to Lizard being on the roof and Spider-Man being there, and they get into a fight. And it builds up to Spider-Man almost meeting his demise at the hands of the Lizard when Captain Stacy shows up. And that's actually one of my favorite moments where Lizard is taunting him, telling him, he's like, you've got no parents, you've got no uncle, you've got no friends or whatever. I don't know what he says. And he's like, all alone. And then Captain Stacy comes and shoots like a shotgun at the lizard, and he says, he's not alone. And I thought that was a really great moment. You know, Peter's been accepted by Captain Stacy, which is nice. And it's also, you know, it shows that, like, there are other people who care about, you know, obviously Aunt May is still there. He's not alone. He has friends, and he has people who care about him. But sometimes, you know, especially as a teenager, sometimes you can kind of feel that way, perhaps. And especially for someone who's lost, I mean, I'm assuming, someone who's lost their parents, and especially after they lost their uncle like that. So it's nice that, you know, Captain Stacy kind of steps up and steps up and says that.
Yeah. At the same time, though, he was bringing the antidote to him.
Right.
So,
but still.
But, yeah. I want to
Don't
go
ruin
back
this.
and
Don't cheapen this moment for me, John.
I want to go back and talk about the cranes.
Okay. Oh, yes, the cranes.
That
was when I saw this movie the first time in the theater, the dad on the bridge who says, my son is in the car still because I'm an idiot and I left him in there. That actor is C. Thomas Howell, who was, you know, kind of more famous, I would say, when he was a child. He played Pony Boy in The Outsiders.
Great movie.
Yeah. And so I remember when I saw this in the theater, I was like, why did C. Thomas Howell... I was like, that's a really small part for C. Thomas Howell to play. And it wasn't until the crane scene that I realized they brought him back. It's still kind of a small part, but it's bigger than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah. And it gives him a reason to do what he did.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, he calls all the
crane operators.
The crane operators to turn the cranes, which is fine. But when I saw it the first time, and it still is cheesy, where they all turn, like when it shows that the cranes are turning, they're all like turning simultaneously
at the same time. Like, yeah, it's like synchronized crane operation.
Yeah, but the scene is so good because
it's one of the best scenes of the movie. Yeah,
it's great. I love that scene. Every time I see it, I'm like, this is cheesy, but at the same time, I'm like, this is awesome because the whole city, I mean, you've got the crane operators, they're turning for Spider-Man. He's got this long road to go down.
Yeah.
He's been shot in the leg, which, you know, they don't know, but and when he starts swinging, he's just got the support of the entire city.
Yeah.
He's got the police down there blocking off the roads for him. There's fire trucks.
And even the police helicopter. The police helicopter puts their spotlight on him.
Yes.
And then they move the spotlight up to the cranes to show him. Look what we've got.
They do. And, you know, he's just swinging down the street, and, you know, everyone's just on the sidelines just watching him go, and you can just... He's carrying the hope of the city with him, and they're trusting him to do that. And it was very heartwarming to watch that scene.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it's one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
It's one of the scenes that really kind of takes this movie from being okay to good.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's, you know, it seems like a simple scene that you would think they would put in almost any Spider-Man type of movie, but they really, like you said, having the whole city behind Spider-Man, having Spider-Man's back is like always kind of a nice thing to see.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert, Spider-Man saves the day. He is able to put the antidote into that machine before Lizard is able to spread that formula out. And so the only person it really affects or the only people it really affects is Dr. Kirk Connors himself and the cops who he has infected earlier. Those are really the only people that have had that formula kind of sprayed on them. I don't know exactly how you would say that.
Yeah, and they were turning.
Yeah, they were. So the rest of the city, it just doesn't really kind of affect them, but it affects Kirk Connors. And it's nice because I think it affects his mind, too. Like I said, his mind had also been altered by this formula. And so once he starts to change, he kind of realizes that he's made a mistake, and he actually saves Peter from falling off the building, which was a nice touch. I'm glad they added that. And then he does go to jail. I mean, he did do bad things, so he has to...
Unlike in Spider-Man 3, where Sandman gets to walk away.
Right. Sandman's like, sorry. And they're like, that's cool. No problem. Yes, correct. So Captain Stacy, while he was fighting the lizard, got stabbed by the lizard. And as he's dying, he tells Peter to keep Gwen out of this. Because I think he knows, to be Spider-Man is to constantly have not only yourself in danger, but the people around you in danger. And so he makes Peter promise him to keep Gwen out of it, basically to not date Gwen anymore.
But it's okay for him to be the police captain.
Right. Double standard. So he promises, and then there's that scene, which I thought was pretty well done, with after the funeral, and she comes to see Peter, and she realizes it. He doesn't really say anything to her, but she realizes he made you promise, didn't he? And I don't think Peter responds, but she knows. And so then at the very end of the movie, he's in school, and he shows up late to class, and Gwen Stacy's in the class, and the teacher says, "You're late, Peter," or whatever. And he says, "Sorry, I promise it won't happen again." And she says, "Don't make promises you can't keep." And then he points this comment to Gwen and says, "Yeah, but those are the best kind." And she gets a little smile on her face, and then the movie ends. And I like, well, then it goes to the swinging scenes of Spider-Man, and then it ends. But I like that scene. I thought it was really nice, and I did read an article or a comment online that there's some folks out there who don't like that line, because it's basically like everything he learned about being a hero, he's like, yeah, whatever, and throws it all out the door by the end because he wants to date Gwen Stacy. But I'm okay with it because, number one, he's like we've said multiple times in this episode, he's a teenager.
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of stay away from a person that you like, especially at that age. Even though you kind of know better, it's like that crush kind of always kind of wins out, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, love's so powerful.
Right.
You can't. It's hard to. I don't think even if he wasn't a teenager. I don't think. I think it would be very difficult to put that above anything else.
Right.
So
I like the way it ended.
Yeah, me too. I wanted them to get together,
Yeah.
and it gave you that.
Right.
So yeah, the swinging scene at the end was cool. I love when they end superhero movies like that,
Yeah.
especially as big icons as Batman and Spider-Man and stuff. I liked how he had a crane again during that scene.
Yeah, yeah.
So apparently there's a Spider-Man crane crew now.
Yep.
Whenever Spider-Man needs to do something, they probably are wearing their Spider-Man shirts.
Right.
And go get in their cranes.
He's got his Spidey watch communicator or whatever to talk to them. Hey guys, I need my cranes.
4th Street, let's go.
Overall, very enjoyable movie. Didn't really care for it the first time around. Well, not that I wouldn't say I didn't care for it. I liked it, I just didn't think it held up. But rewatching it, I think I've actually grown to really enjoy it a lot more than I originally did.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all very much when I first saw it.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time, and I love when this happens. It's so awesome when this happens, but it's been a long time since I've watched a movie and that I didn't like really at all. In fact, almost loathed it.
Right.
And then the second viewing, really liked it.
Yeah. I would give it a B+, is how I would grade it. What about you?
I give it 4 stars.
4 out of 5.
4 out of
right?
5.
Yeah.
4 out of 5.
Very nice. Let us know what you thought about The Amazing Spider-Man. You can leave a comment on cinemaheroes.com, or you can email us, justin@cinemaheroes.com or john@cinemaheroes.com. Or you can always go to our Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM podcast, or tweet us at CinemaHeroes, which I admit I kind of neglect our Twitter. Every now and again we'll post things. I'm trying to get better about posting things more often on both our Facebook and our website. So I will try to keep up with that a little bit more, but I do have a tendency to forget about the Twitter and not post on there. But I will check it if you send me things on there. As always, if you go to cinemaheroes.com, be sure to click on the Amazon link we have on the right-hand side. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but we get a couple of pennies for the things that you purchase, and it can always help out. I think we've made $12 off of it in the past, which are cost I think about that to host our media. So anything helps. And I think we're going to try as hard as we can to get back onto a regular 2-week schedule with these episodes. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for downloading. Thanks for not giving up on us. We're going to try to get back into it. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
Thanks for listening.